Wednesday on Daily Delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everyone's having a great day out there. And a terrific show, as always. Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune columnist, joins me here in just a few minutes to talk Gopher football, a little bit of Vikings, mostly Gophers, though, talking about that 1917 loss to North Carolina, spinning ahead to Rhode Island this weekend. Should be an easier task for them, but a lot of things for them to clean up. They were the only Big Ten team, and there's 18 of them now, 18 Big Ten teams. They were the only Big Ten team to lose on opening weekend. It's opening game, 17-1 for the Big Ten. The Gophers were the one. So that tells you where they stand right now. Not a great opener against North Carolina. Of course, they played a tougher team than a lot of the other Big Ten teams, but still a very winnable game, especially after we watched it unfold. North Carolina, not a great team, lost their starting quarterback. Gophers still couldn't pull it out in the end. So what do they need to solve? Chip and I will get to that, in addition to some Viking stuff, some Mike Zimmer stuff at the end of our segment. I've got a little more Vikings thoughts at the end of the show as well. First, though, what did I miss? I want to talk about the Twins and their playoff chances, which strangely are improving, even as they kind of gasp and, have fits and starts towards the finish line here of the season. Big reason for that is, they've won a couple games lately. They lost yesterday 2-1 to Tampa Bay, but they, picked it up Sunday and Monday, a couple important wins to get themselves kind of back into better spot. But most of this is because really the two teams that are nearest to them, their biggest threats in the wild card race right now, Boston and Kansas City, have been in the complete tank the last week or two. Boston's lost 4 in a row, 9 of its last 12 games. Kansas City, after vaulting ahead of the Twins, pulling even with the Guardians just a week ago, now has lost 7 in a row. Twins are ahead of the Royals now. Kansas City lost 7 in a row, no relief in sight, starting to feel maybe a little bit of the pressure of September baseball, a team that hasn't really been here before, a team that lost over 100 games a year ago. So the Twins, even though they've not been great by any stretch lately, have still either gained ground or held steady in their playoff position. And as you tick more games off of the schedule, that becomes important, to the point now where there are only 24 games left in this regular season for the Twins, and they're, several games clear of both Boston and Kansas City in the wild card race. I'm sorry, Boston and anybody else. They're a little bit clear of Kansas City, but they're 5 games ahead of Boston. 5 games ahead really of anybody else in the wild card race, 5.5 games. So looking good to win, one of those last 2 wild card spots. I don't think they're going to catch the Orioles, but they're clear of they're ahead of the Royals right now, ahead of Boston, still ahead of the Rays, ahead of the Blue Jays, way ahead of the Mariners, who fell off the face of the earth after a great start to this season. So, kind of looking right now at kind of where they're at. Got to watch the Tigers a little bit. Tigers now have a winning record. Tigers have a shot. But the Twins, according to Fangraphs, 95.5% chance to make the playoffs. Most of that chance is as a wild card, still giving them a 14% chance to win the division. They do have some games against Kansas City coming up this weekend, and then those 4 against the Guardians, in a week or so. Guardians, though, 4.5 up on the Twins now, so that's going to be a tough catch, even with those games against the Guardians still looming. All of this is a long wind-up to say the Twins, even if you've been watching them and saying, season's going in a tailspin, they're not going to make the playoffs. They almost certainly are going to make the playoffs, and that almost certainly means they are going to be playing on wild card, and that opening wild card round, that best of 3. Probably won't be hosting it this year, I would think, because if it's the 3, 4, 5, 6 that are in that mix, they'll probably be on the road. probably against a team like, that's either the top wild card like Baltimore or the lowest division winner like Houston. No matter the opponent, though, they're going to need 3 starting pitchers potentially in that wild card round because it's a 3-game series. That means to me that they are going to have a huge question mark in what could be the most important game of their season, a potential elimination game 3 in a wild card winner-take-all scenario. Who is your starting pitcher in that game? That's a question I've been asking myself the last 24 hours. I love to pre-imagine scenarios that may never come to fruition. I like to be ready for them. That's just something I do. I think David Festa, who pitched pretty well again last night against Tampa Bay, 5 innings, 2 runs, has to be considered maybe the favorite right now to be that game 3 starter. I know there's other candidates. Simeon Woods-Richardson has a longer track record this year of pitching pretty well than Festa does, but he's been slumping lately, velocity down a little bit. They're watching his innings pitched. He's pitched way more innings this year than he ever had before. So I don't know if that's kind of the ascending arc you want going into the postseason. Chris Paddock is still sitting out there. Maybe could come back by the end of the season, but we talked to Phil Miller, a week ago. I think sounds like, if Paddock is able to come back, it might be more as a bullpen guy. Louis Varland's going to get a start tonight, it sounds like, and they're keeping him stretched out. If he does well down the stretch, could be a scenario where you go with an opener and then Varland in a game 3. But right now, of all these options, and Zebby Matthews just doesn't seem to be an option to me right now as a playoff starter. Just guy who's a great story, but got shelled his last time out and started the year a couple levels lower than you would want him to start the year if he was going to be a contender for this. I think Festa is your best contender now for a game 3, like bona fide starter. I don't think you're going to have him go 7 innings, but a guy who could get you 4 or 5 quality innings, get you through the order a couple of times, and then try to piece it together. So what a turn of events. What a place for them to be. They had lots of options last year, right? They had Bailey Ober, Joe Ryan, kind of sitting there waiting to take their turn. Kind of a dilemma. Who would it be among reasonably experienced starters in that game 3? If they would have needed it. But last year, of course, they didn't. Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray were terrific in the first 2 games, but then it became a question of who would be in that next series. But if it gets to a game 3 in a wild card series this year, who is your pitcher? I think for me, it's David Festa right now for the Twins.
Let's bring in Chip Scoggins right now, Star Tribune columnist. Chip, I want to talk Gopher football. I don't know if the Gophers want me to talk about Gopher football, but I want to talk about Gopher football. Should get a little bit easier with Rhode Island this week, but a winnable game, I think, this past Thursday. I don't think North Carolina's all that good. They lost their starting quarterback in the midst of it. They still lose. Doesn't look like a whole lot has changed, and that was kind of the theme of what you wrote. I know it's just 1 week, but that was kind of what you wrote coming off that game.
Yeah, I think that's about as disappointing of a opener as a team can have when you think about how the season ended last year in November, and the things just fell apart for the Gophers, and they lose 4 straight. And you have a quarterback change, and there's all this talk about you're going to be more explosive. You got to score more points. You got to clean up the things defensively. We've heard a lot about Max Brosmer coming in, and we saw a lot of the same issues of last year, and that just felt like a chaotic performance to me from the Vikings. When you look at just the killer penalties they had, the Gophers, the killer penalties they had.
Foreshadowing.
It felt like every penalty was a backbreaker. I mean, it took away a fumble recovery, the holding penalty on the last drive.
That one
pushed the field goal back. You missed field goals. You had 2 procedural penalties on punts. It was a sloppy performance against yes, it's a Power 4 team, but that was not a great North Carolina team. It's not like a North Carolina that had Drake May.
No.
and then they lose their quarterback to sounds like a pretty horrific leg injury, which is unfortunate for Max Johnson. But it was just if you were hoping to see something different, I'm not sure that you got that. And the thing that kind of frustrated me was we talked so much about PJ's flex game management, conservative nature, play calling, and how, this is going to be the year Max Brosmer, they're going to open it up and they're going to, the first quarter of the season opener, it's 3rd and goal from the 10 and they call an outside run.
Yep.
I for the life of me, I don't understand that logic.
I don't either.
I don't know. And then PJ came out at his press conference Monday and said he didn't announce this publicly before the game, but he had in his mind going into it that it was going to be the first team to 20 points won the game. I don't know why you would set that mindset in your mind before you even play the game. So he was almost like he was in that mode of, okay, we're down here. I don't trust the passing game. Let's just get a field goal. That's just not – you're not going to have a high success rate doing that against quality competition.
No. I mean, this day and age, you can't settle for field goals. Like, if you throw an incompletion there and then you have to kick a field goal, fine. Like, we accept that. Like, but do they not have a play design at that point, or are they that nervous about the offensive line at that point? Because in all fairness, they were getting Brosmer was under extreme duress, at least for the first half. There's no time to throw. The protection was not holding up, but that's lessons you got to learn along the way, right? Like, you still got to shoot your shot there.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we'll get to the offensive line, but PJ mentioned after the game that he said they'd had some sacks before then. Okay, if it happens again, you're kicking it from the 15. It's
right.
not,
Yeah. It's not like you're out of field goal range. Yeah.
It wasn't going to knock you out of field goal range. And so, I thought the offensive line just really struggled in pass pro. I mean, Brosmer got sacked 5 times. He ducked out a few other sacks and scrambled. It took them a while to kind of find the speed of the game, I think. And maybe that's part of being season openers, but that's not an excuse. They just didn't perform to the level that a veteran offensive line should, I didn't think. I don't know. Do they have you would think they'd have a play call for that. I for the life of me, I don't understand the logic. You're not going to pick up 10 yards there running the ball.
No.
And so you're playing for a field goal at home against a defense that was not very good last year. If you look at North Carolina, they have a new defense coordinator because they weren't very good. I mean, they didn't have a good defense last year. So it was your chance to make a statement that, we're not going to settle here. We have a new quarterback. We're going to, really push this thing. And I thought Brosmer obviously was nervous early. You could tell. He was jumping in the pocket. His second pass, he really sailed it high over the tight end's head over the middle. I thought he settled down.
Me too.
Near the end of the second quarter, he had the really nice pass between defenders along the North Carolina to Daniel Jackson along the North Carolina sideline there. Yep. That was probably his best throw of the day. And they go down and score, and I thought, okay, they got the first game nerves. They're done with it, right? Well, then you come out of the second half, they didn't have the ball because their defense couldn't get off the field. They couldn't make a stop.
Yeah. No, North Carolina's first drive was like 8.5 minutes. It was like
and then they went 3 and out, and then you give it right back. I mean, the Gophers only ran 4 plays, I think, in the third quarter, and the Gophers went from having talking about defensively in 2022, they were top 5 in the nation in third down defense. Last year, I think they were 7th worst. I mean, they went from one of the best to one of the worst, and they were giving up third down percentages at 48%. Well, North Carolina converted 50%. They were 8 of 16. It's like the defense, I thought, was poor on third down. The tackling was very sloppy. They missed so many tackles there. And then the penalties were just really critical. And then early on, they had a chance to intercept the pass at, I think, Carolina's 10-yard line and maybe return it in. Their cornerback drops it. So it was things like that, Michael, where it's just a lot of self-inflicted mistakes that prevented them from winning a game that, let's be honest, like, that's a game you need to win. Because yes, it's a better opponent than what they're going to see the next 2 weeks, but it was if you play, you don't have to play error-free ball or perfect ball. If you just eliminate some of those penalties and missed tackles, you should win that game. So that's where the disappointment comes in.
Well, the disappointment comes in too. They didn't push the ball downfield hardly at all. I mean, I think they threw it deep once, but that was because they got North Carolina to jump off sides, and they got a pass interference, a PI out of it. So at least, but there didn't seem like there was much designed to open it up much at all. There just wasn't. It didn't feel like a dynamic offense at all. And I know flex teams, last year notwithstanding, have tended to get better a lot of times as the year has gone on. Especially that you think about 2019, where they barely scraped through the non-conference season, then got on a roll and went 11-2 that year. Yeah. So you got some benefit of the doubt here as they kind of work through some of this stuff, but it did not look like a well-coached team in that first game, did it?
No. The special teams issues are still a problem. Going back to the vertical passing game, I thought we would see more of it. I still think they're going to be more of a. I still think they're going to be more of a rhythm, high percentage passing offense. Whereas, not to say they're not going to take shots, but I think you're going to see more of the short to intermediate. What I don't know is, he was sacked 5 times and under pressure a lot. Did they call plays that he just wasn't able to get to? Did they get nervous because the pass rush was so consistent that they felt like he wasn't going to have time to really let routes materialize down? That I don't know. That we'll have to see if they incorporate that more. I do think, oddly, I thought Brosmer looked his best when the pressure was the highest. That last drive when he take it over at 1:45
I agree.
left, and you got to go down and score. He really looked poised and in control of what he wanted to do on the money with his throws. Early on, I think he missed 2 or 3 passes that the guy was wide open and he just didn't have the right accuracy. And I think probably some of I got to imagine his nerves were high, right? This is his first start, Big Ten, Division I, big crowd. He'd played at FCS his entire career. I can understand if a guy was amped up and probably a little bit nervous, but I thought he settled in. So I want to see if they take what they did at the end of that game and really bring that forward and show confidence in the passing game. But again, this goes back to the head coach and a willingness to show more, more trust in the passing game. That in those situations where it's 3rd and goal from the 10, you're not handing the ball off.
Can't do that.
But we saw it. There was a series where they were backed up the 2 or 3 yard line, and they threw first down. He was in the end zone through. That's not something we did see from a PJ Fleck offense. So there were some signs, but there's also the major one that, again, when you had a chance to really try to get a touchdown there, you set him for field goals. That just felt like this is PJ ball, right? And I just wonder at some point what it's going to take to change in those situations for him to be more aggressive. I don't know. We've talked about this ad nauseum for the last however many years. So
nothing about the operation looked crisp on offense either. It just looked, the first series was, I think, a 3 and out. It was just like, okay. Second one was a 3 and out. It was just like, what? This is what we've been waiting for. This is it. And the defense, aside from, the long drives they gave up, held them to field goals. They only had like 200. Both teams only had like 250 yards. It was not. It was not an aesthetically pleasing game from either side. No. I would say.
Well, part of the problem is, yes, the defense didn't give up a lot of points, but they didn't give their offense a chance to really do much because they couldn't get off the field on 3rd down. 8-16 against an offense that really had no passing game whatsoever until they had the one bust where they got the big play there. So that, you knew they were going to try to run the ball. Now, Amari Hampton is one of the best running backs in college football. He was a Doak Walker finalist last year. He's probably one of the 2-3 best running backs in college. He's good. You saw how talented he is. But still, way too many missed tackles, I thought. They've got to clean that up. And so defensively, they didn't give up a lot of points, but they didn't make the stops and give their offense a chance to really kind of get anything going in the second half. Special teams, obviously, is a tough day for the all Big Ten kicker.
Oh yeah,
that's going to happen. That's going to happen. I mean, just the unfortunate that happened to him in a close game like that. That wound up being decisive. But I don't have any really worries about him because we've seen him, Kesich, be a really reliable kicker. He just had a bad day. So I mean, it was just a lot of things, Mike. That if you were a Gopher fan, I'm sure it was pretty dejecting and deflating to see that performance.
It was.
Season over. Because you spend the all off season with all this hype and build up and things are gonna be different, a new quarterback and guys returning and then to play like that. But what I'm curious to see is, they were out without their best player, Darius Taylor, and his injury history is really piling up. But when he comes back, because I liked some of the things that the Oklahoma transfer did, Marcus Major showed.
Yep.
As though I think those two as a 1-2 punch could be pretty dynamic. Are they still going to try to have – because they had balance in terms of run pass. They had the kind of balance. There wasn't explosiveness that you wanted to see, but there wasn't like it was 80-20
right
split. I mean, it was – what happens when Darius Taylor comes back? What does that offense look like?
They didn't play like a service academy, at least.
No.
There's funny. I was sitting in the seats. We got tickets. We were in like the outdoor club, so it was like good seats, like pretty 40, 50 yard line, up fairly high, but good. And there's somebody. There's a older gentleman not too far from us who seems like he's been to a handful of games, maybe a couple hundred, over the course of his life. And first quarter, he just looks at me and goes, "It's going to be a long year." I'm like, man. He's seen a lot of long years. I'll take his word for it. So
that is the thing. I mean, there was a lot of frustration the way within fans that felt different to me last year, at the end of last year, in terms of pushback on Fleck into his game management and his offense, and rightfully so. And there was a lot of talk this year because, hey, now you get this quarterback that they trust, and you heard that
right.
Greg Harbaugh, the offense coordinator, said, had a quote in training camp, he's rolling. The quarterback's rolling, and we've heard that Brosmer just nothing but accolades, and I think he's going to be a good quarterback for him. I do. I think I saw some things there that I think he'll be okay, but it's just the philosophy. Are they when things get tight, are they going to be willing to trust him to do it? That's what still remains to be seen. And at that moment of truth in the first quarter, we didn't see it, and so. Now they had to in the second half. They had to obviously at the end of the game, and he came through and led the offense down there. And obviously the bad holding penalty put him in a tough spot.
Yeah.
But I liked what he showed on that final drive.
Yeah,
let's see if he can carry that for whatever he found, whatever they're doing. Let's see if he can kind of carry that for. But here's the thing: these next two games they should be heavily favored. They will be heavily favored. This should not be the time that we've seen in the past where. It's let's run the ball a million times and just get out of here and take her. No, I've written this before, and I'll keep saying the passing game is not a light switch. It isn't something you can just turn on when you need it. They got to nurture it and develop it. And so I hope they take these next 2 weeks to really work on the rhythm of it, the timing of it, try new creative concepts to try to get that to where you feel like if it's 3rd and 5 against Iowa, and you need a first down in the fourth quarter, that you don't just have to hand the ball off to Darius Taylor and hope he can break a tackle.
Yep, that's exactly right. And we'll see if going forward they can avoid the dubious distinction. They did stand out on opening weekend, Chip. 17-1 for the Big Ten. They were the one.
That is not 18 team league and 17 wins and one team loss. That's it's not a company you want to keep there. I mean, you want to be the only one. No. And we saw some teams struggle. We saw some teams look good. I thought, to me, the story or the headliner of the Big Ten from the first weekend, we can all overreact to one, but I thought USC looked really, really good.
Yeah.
The quarterback, Miller, looked really good. They got wide receivers, but the biggest thing for them is their defense. I mean, that's been the big obstacle for them. They've really struggled defensively. They made changes there. They look good defensively. If that's who they are, if they're that good defensively, they they looked really good. But
they beat LSU, right?
17-1 and one team.
17-1. Iowa scoring 40 points. Ethan Kaliakmanis, by the way, against lesser competition, but he had a nice game for Rutgers. So
that's the thing. It's like some of the stuff you have to look at who they played. But we also saw Oregon look against Idaho look just not good at all, and barely won a close game there. So we all overreacted to week one, and we probably did this some with the Gophers, but when you have the track record of the conservative play and being in those situations that PJ doesn't, and you see it again, that's where the frustration comes, because it's not like, boy, that was a strange call. Why did you do it? No, it's like, this is what we've seen.
This is what they always do. That's what they always do.
I think that's where, the fan reaction has been what it is, or so kind of forceful after one game, because like, man, we've seen this a lot before. So,
yeah. Well, Chip, I got you here a little bit on the Vikings before we go. Another chance to overreact in a few days to their opener at the Giants. Again, kind of like the Gophers, a game where you could kind of see it going either way. I don't think the Giants are very good, but last time, I don't know if it was Royce who said it, but the last time Daniel Jones was good, it was in that playoff game that got him a giant extension and ruined the dream season of Kevin O'Connell's first year. They were awful last year. Jones was hurt and terrible. He's back now, but I don't know what to make of this team yet. I think the Vikings defense should be. I think the Vikings defense should be better. I like the defense. It kind of comes down to the quarterback, and there's just not a lot of enthusiasm there. Darnold's got a lot to prove, and there's no JJ McCarthy kind of like tantalizing you in the distance. He's going to be out for the whole year.
No, it's hard to. I think my season prediction for the Star Tribune, I said 7-10.
I did too. I think, yeah.
I think the defense will be. I think they're deeper. I think Brian Flores has more kind of chess pieces to move around. I have some concerns about their cornerback situation and where they are there. Obviously,
the depth is not good.
But to me, this is. I mean, no newsflash here. The X factor, Sam Darnold. What are you getting?
Of course,
from Sam Darnold?
Yeah.
And to me, this is a referendum on him. I mean, you're either going to make good of this opportunity where you're surrounded by probably in the bit. Let's take last year out because he wasn't the starter at San Francisco. Never was meant to be. This is the best situation he's been in his career as a starter.
Oh, sure.
As a starter. So you're either going to prove that all the other things that dragged you down in those other situations, or you're going to prove that you're just not a starting quarterback in the NFL, because I don't really see the excuses that we can cling to if he doesn't play well for this offense.
He had a decent run at the end of 2022 with Carolina. He started like 6 games. They went 4-2. It was kind of a lost season for Carolina. Actually, funny. Yeah. Baker Mayfield was kind of the starter that year for Carolina, and I kind of think about these two on a bit of a parallel. What the Vikings would hope is a parallel track. Baker Mayfield comes off of that year, gets into a better situation in Tampa Bay, has himself a good year, now gets paid,
goes to the playoffs and wins.
Can Darnold be that? I don't know. I don't think his track record is as good coming into this season as Mayfield's was a year ago, even, because Mayfield had some good years in Cleveland. But you look at Darnold when he went 4-2 in that stretch. Those 4 wins, Carolina ran the ball at least 40 times each of those games, and he was throwing the ball 20-22 times. Kevin O'Connell is never going to do that. But if they need to be closer though to 50-50, just like you want Fleck to come up with the passes. You need Aaron Jones and the running game to give Kevin O'Connell enough of a reason to call more running plays, because that is probably the balance that they're going to need this year.
Well, it is. Like, why do you go out and sign Aaron Jones if you're just going to be a bottom 5 team in attempts? It doesn't, I've liked we haven't seen him in a preseason game, but we saw the way Aaron Jones finished last year. He looks fast when you watch him in training camp. Now, they're not tackling and all those things, so you have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt. But he looks, he looks explosive when you see him on the field, at least. And this is the other big question we have to find out about O'Connell was his lack of trust in the run game Is that because that's just who he is as a play caller, or is that because he didn't trust his personnel to get the job done? And we don't know. We'll find that out because I think the running back's the best, situation for that now. But if you look at Sam Darnold, his numbers career-wise, like there are a lot of turnovers. And so the more opportunities you give him, I think there's going to be more opportunities for. So I think the running game, establishing that, it's never going to be balanced with Kevin O'Connell. Not many teams are, obviously, but it has to be more a part of your offense to take the pressure off Sam Darnold because he's just been turnover prone throughout his career, and you've got to try to minimize that.
Yeah, it's not just interceptions too; it's fumbles, and he'll take off running.
Yeah.
He's a better runner than I really thought. So there is that element of his game. If he can be let's say he's middle of the pack, which I think is a pretty, a lofty goal given where he's been throughout his career. If he plays like the 15th best quarterback in the NFL this year, given what he's got around him, then I think they have a chance to win 9 games and maybe compete for a wild card. It's hard to even stretch and think he's that good though at this point.
Yeah, well, you're just speculating. We need to see it. Like
right.
I want to see this version of Sam Darnold with Justin Jefferson, what are we saying about his line? Competent line. I mean, I think the tackles are obviously very good.
The tackles are
good. Interior was still. I think Aaron Jones has a chance to be, productive for him. Obviously missing Hawkinson, but if Addison's healthy and you just have pieces there. So, and a play caller who's played a position, who's going to, presumably put you in him the best position possible. So, but until we see it, it's just guesswork because we're just going on how he looked at Carolina or how he looked at, in New York. So, but it is the great intrigue, the great X factor for this team and kind of what you get from there. Because I do think the defense, I think we sort of expect that they're going to take a step forward, even though the last month of the season was not good for that defense. I think they're going to take a step forward. So, but it's going to be fascinating to see, what Darnold does once this, Sunday kicks off and he has, the reins of the offense.
We know one person who won't see it. Mike Zimmer says he's not watched a Vikings game since it all came crashing down a couple years ago. I talked about Mark Craig's story with Royce on Monday or Tuesday, so we don't have to get too deep on it. But man, Zimmer really let it loose, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, there was only one person, I think, one reporter that was going to be able to go talk to Zim and have that kind of candidness that and Mark, because he has a good relationship with Zim and Zim trusts him. I don't even think Mark probably anticipated that Zimmer would be that outspoken about
forthcoming.
Forthcoming about everything. I don't know if Zimmer cares what the reaction was and how people view him, but he did not look good. It did not come across well. It's just, I think as a coach, that first quote that he gave Mark, the first quote in the story where he said he didn't want to talk to his players so they got me fired. That's a cardinal sin.
Yeah.
It's a cardinal sin in coaching. You just can't do that. And so there's a lot said there. Mark did a great job with that interview and pulling things out of Zimmer that honestly were pent up and on his mind for 2.5 years, and he let it all out there. But I thought just as a leader of an organization, it was a really bad look, and it showed just how dysfunctional it was at the end of his time how absolutely mandatory that they made a change.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I wrote about this on Tuesday. It's like all the things that we saw and could see and hear with our own eyes and ears, but that were never really allowed to come to light because things get spun a certain way, things get washed over. The you like that moment in 2021 with Kirk Cousins, the 2021 draft, which he clearly hated. Like he walked out of the room when they took Kellen Mond. They took like 4 third-round picks. He hated all of them. So mad at Spielman. He didn't talk to him the rest of the year, still hasn't talked to him since. Just all those details. Like, you knew they hated each other at the end.
Yeah.
To have the confirmation through this was fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I can't remember seeing another coach be that outspoken and that angry, and him saying, "Sorry, but I hold grudges against everybody and everything who perceived came." It doesn't matter what part of the organization you were. If he was angry with you, he's still angry with you.
At least not while you're still coaching. Like, he's an active coach right now. If he has any desire to be a head coach again, I don't think this isn't the way to go about it.
Well, he knows he's not going to be a head coach, and
I know.
That just some of the things he said. I mean, he knows he's not going to get another chance.
No, it is fascinating that Kendricks is back with him, though. That was a good way.
Yeah, that was interesting because he had the one quote that everybody clung to, and still the fear base that we still talk about. I give Eric credit for talking to Mark and not trying to hide. He said, "You know what? I said it in the heat of the moment, and things were going on, and sometimes you say stuff you regret." I give him credit for at least saying that and owning up to it. Yeah,
I do. I do too. If you haven't read it, go read the story. It was tremendous. Like I said, you don't get that kind of stuff all that often, especially to kind of relitigating a very interesting part of Vikings history. So go check that out. Chip Scoggins, appreciate it. I'm sure I'll talk to you next week. And we'll talk to you then.
Thanks, Mikey. See you, man.
Great stuff from Chip, as always. We'll have more Gopher talk tomorrow, by the way. Marcus Fuller from the Star Tribune will join me. We'll look a little bit more ahead to that Rhode Island game and talk a lot of Gopher volleyball with Marcus Fuller. Gophers defeated Texas over the weekend. Number 1 ranked Texas, defending champion. Gophers beat them, took Stanford to 5 sets. This looks like a team that is kind of regaining its footing again. They came into the season ranked like 17th, 18th. That's, in any universe other than the one we're used to from the Gophers, that would be a good season, but that's lower than we're used to seeing them. So there's some questions in Keegan Cook's second season. Would they be the team they wanted to be? Well, opening weekend certainly tells us that they think they are that good and they are playing that well. So we will talk to Marcus about Gopher volleyball. He covered that over the weekend. They could be in the top 10 as soon as a few days from now. So we'll see where they wind up. Right now, though, let's finish with the cooler. Nothing clarifies how you feel about a team quite like seeing a depth chart. Vikings released their week 1 depth chart. We've already seen kind of their initial depth chart, kind of where they stand in camp, things like that. But now we see kind of all the starters, all the reserves lined up. Clarifies for me that the defense this year is going to be better than the offense. I look at the front 7 for the Vikings, the linebackers especially, and I say this is the spot where I see quality depth. This is the spot where I see a team that could withstand those inevitable injuries that will crop up in an NFL season. I look at the offense, and I don't feel the same way. I look at the quarterback room, Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, and then Brett Rippon. That's not a depth chart at quarterback that makes me think, A, you've got a lot of star power at the top, and B, that you are going to be able to withstand any sort of injury. That J.J. McCarthy injury really looming large in terms of how this season will play out, how we feel about this season. Running back, okay, Ty Chandler, if Aaron Jones has to miss some time, you feel okay about Ty Chandler. I think they could withstand that okay. Wide receiver, beyond Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, which is a really good one too. Beyond that, not a lot of proven depth. The offensive line got a bunch of rookies in key backup roles. You've got still that interior of the offensive line, Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury, Blake Brandell. I don't feel great about that right now. I don't feel great about a lot of spots on the offense. I feel much better about where things sit with the defense right now. So again, just the clarifying nature of a depth chart. I feel a lot better about the Vikings defense right now than I do about the Vikings offense. Kind of a strange position to be in. I mean, this head coach is an offensive coach. Brian Flores, though, by and large, had the better side of the ball last season, even without as many resources, was given more resources this offseason. They signed a bunch of guys, drafted Dallas Turner in the first round, so we'll see how he plays this season. They got some reinforcements on, at cornerback with Stephon Gilmore coming in, Shaq Griffin coming in. If they stay relatively healthy, I like their secondary. I like their depth at linebacker, even if they don't stay, completely healthy. The front is, kind of a work in progress, but I think they have enough bodies to mix and match there. So I'm feeling pretty good about the defense. I still think 7-10 is the prediction. I still think that is correct. But if you're looking for a side of the ball that could be the influencer, that could be the reason they are better than we think they are, it is definitely the defense for the Vikings. That'll do it for me today. Like I said, Marcus Fuller on tomorrow's show. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow.